Welcome to Other People's Shoes. This season, we're exploring what it means to be unmade. Life can sometimes feel like an unmade bed. Messy, chaotic, and overwhelming. But here's the beauty. Every unmade bed has the potential to be remade. In Season 20, we're sharing powerful stories of people who faced their life's chaos head-on and found the courage to rebuild, turning their messes into masterpieces. Just like starting your day with a simple act of making your bed, these stories remind us that small steps can lead to extraordinary transformations. So put on your shoes and take the first step toward remaking your own life. You're about to be inspired, challenged, and encouraged in ways you never expected. This is Other People's Shoes, Season 20. Unmade. And now, here's your host, Neil Matthews.
Yes, welcome in, one and all. Another edition of Other People's Shoes, Season 20, Unmade. I'll tell you what, I love the line in our intro, by the way, that says, putting on your shoes and taking the first step. So let me tell you a little background, a little context, try to set the table for you today. I met this guy a while back. His name is Mike. It's kind of rare that when I meet a guest that we take the conversation, as you will, offline or away from the show. It's happened a few times, not very many. And that's okay. I'm not putting that pressure on future guests or soon-to-be guests. But he's just a cool cat. I would just put him in that category. And so we had this texting thing going on. And I reached out to him and I said, hey, I'm starting this new season called Unmade. Do you have anybody that comes to mind? And I love Mike dearly because he sent me, I kid you not, a spreadsheet of everyone that has ever been, I think, on his show. And he has a show called Coffin Talk. So great show. Go check it out. Good stuff that he's doing over there. This gentleman that we're going to be talking to today is on that list and says Frank. And then it says in this other category, it says former skinhead neo-Nazi. And I was like, what? And it caught my attention. And I thought that is one pair of shoes I don't think was even on my radar or even in my ever thought process in any way. And so I just want to give Mike his proper due. And again, welcome in. I will say this genuinely when I say it, my new friend, Frank. Frank, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on.
Does that word friend get thrown around too often, do you think? Not necessarily my first question, but maybe something to break the ice here or the tension, if there is any. I don't know.
I would say no. Right now, this time in our history and where we are in the world, friend is a really good word. It's something that's not really, unfortunately, it's not happening a lot in this country. So we need to point out that we are all friends and we are all children of God is one way that I like to think about it.
That's a good way to think about it. Well, help us with this, Frank, as we get rolling and going. I love to ask this question, and that's this. What size shoes do you wear?
I've been in 9.5 since I was about probably 13. So there, 9.5.
Never got any bigger shoes. Never got to shop in the grown-up section. That was mean. Sorry. That was uncalled for.
It's good. It's good. If that's the worst thing you can say, don't worry about it.
I joke. I wear an 11.5, sometimes 11. It's like three sizes, really. 10.5, 11, 11.5, again, depending on the brand or the style. So that leads into my next thing. Is there a brand or style? Are you a shoe guy, or are you just like whatever's on sale, I'm rocking?
No, I'm a big Vans guy. I like Vans. So I sport probably, my closet probably has about 6 pairs of Vans, all in different colors, different how beat up they are. Some I still wear till the end. Some I get rid of pretty quickly, but Vans is probably one of the shoes I like to sport most.
I have a pair of Vans too. They're actually right back there. I don't know if you can see them. They're on the wall. I stopped wearing them because they would hurt my feet. They were so flat. Yeah. And I had plantar fasciitis for a long time, and they would hurt my feet. And I thought, I can't wear these anymore. I would wear them on Wednesdays specifically when our show comes out. The logo that I used actually initially was a beat up pair of Vans that I found on Canva. And I thought, well, that's really cool. And then I went to eBay because I thought, well, if I'm going to start a show called Other People's Shoes, and we had the Vans, call them Wish Vans. Back in the day, there was a thing called Wish. You could buy like knockoff stuff from. I thought, well, I got to get another pair of shoes or other people's shoes. So I bought used Vans. Truly, they were someone else's shoes. And I thought, well, this is a great metaphor and perhaps analogy to remind me that they are not my shoes, that I truly am trying to walk in someone else's shoes. So I have no idea who the person was that I bought them from on eBay, but I really should maybe find them and thank them. They were a big instrumental piece to other people's shoes. Well, help us with this. When I think of the Nazis, when I think of skinheads, when I think of that type of people group. All I think of is Hitler. I think of hate. I think of the swastika, if I'm saying that correctly. I think of Germany. I think of just, again, this vitriol, this everything maybe even anti-America that comes to my mind. What you think of? What is your definition of that?
My definition of a neo-Nazi is hate. It is because of what we're about to talk about. It also reminds me of low self-esteem and low self-worth. Very self-centered and self-indulged thinking. That's just because I've been in it. So I know that other people would say, what about violence? And yes, violence. But I think the violence comes from the low self-esteem and the low self-worth, and no dignity for other people.
Why on earth would you ever want to be associated with that?
Because I had low self-esteem and low self-worth. I really did. I mean, look, I didn't come up very well. And I know when people hear people say, well, I didn't have a great home life, they say a lot of people don't have a great home life and they didn't do what you did. Look, when I was 13 making these huge life decisions, I was 13. I just happened to buy fully into this thing. When I got into it, man, it was my life. I fully bought into this. This took me out of parents were drug addicts and alcoholics. My parents had divorced when I was a baby, so I was passed back and forth, mostly with my mom for most of the good part of my younger parts of my life, passed up to my dad's and tossed around like a kid who didn't matter. One of the things when people say, like, what did all this do? I thought my whole life I didn't matter. But if I put a pistol in your face, guess what? I seemed to be a pretty important person in your life right at that time. I mattered. When I got to be around these neo-Nazis, my life mattered. Started hanging out with these guys when I was about 13, going on 14 years old. Went to an all-black school in Philly. I'm from Philly. I grew up right next to the Eagle Stadium, so go Birds. Literally grew up right next to the Eagle Stadium as a kid. Went to some rough schools and lived in some rough neighborhoods and was on welfare and was poor and abusive stepfather and you name it, man. And then when I started hanging out with these neo-Nazis up in the farm country, when I got to get out of the city for the summer, these neo-Nazis used to ask me, what's it like really growing up around black people? Because they were living up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania area, which is kind of all Amish. So they didn't know black people. They could talk about they hate black people stuff they wanted, but it was all from a distance. I'm going to school and I'm fist fighting with black kids all the time. Like that was just what was in my life at the time. And so these guys would ask me, what's it like? And that was just amazing. If I came walking in my mom's house or my dad's house with a black eye or a trophy, because I was a big athlete most of my life, my parents never stopped me and said, wow, son, how'd you get that? How'd you get that black eye? Or how'd you get that trophy? They just didn't have time for me. Some neo-Nazi guys asked me, what's it like growing up around black people and taking a train with them every day? It was someone saying, yo, how's your life? How's your life, man? I love that. And on top of that, I'll tell you the other thing is that people need to, I would love people to understand is that when I would hang out with these neo-Nazis, before I even shaved my head and became part of this group, I seen that people feared them. Go to these little nightclubs and people never want to go near a group of neo-Nazis. I seen it in their faces. I seen people fearing these guys. Man, I love that. Because up until that point in my life, I feared everything. I feared my parents and their neglect. I feared my step-parent, my stepdad mostly for his abuse. I feared my school because I was fist fighting all the time. And I feared if I was going to have enough food to eat. We were on welfare at times. Now someone fears me. That, man, I like this. And that's when I first started gravitating towards this stuff.
So when you talk about being in it, I mean, you were in it. You weren't just kind of on the fringe. You were in it. You were the one maybe causing some trauma to perhaps other folks and really engrossed in that culture of that way of life.
Yeah, I bought into it. I didn't move back home. I moved in with neo-Nazis and I lived in compounds. I never went to high school. I mean, I went to high school for like a couple of weeks at one time. I mean, I never went to high school. I lived in the neo-Nazi compounds and I traveled across the country with groups of neo-Nazis and hung out with the people who were planning race wars. There was no drugs allowed. Like I hung out with a group of people that there was no drugs allowed at all. If you did drugs, we kill you. We were doing so much illegal stuff and just outrageous stuff. We knew that if you had any drug addicts in our group, they're always the first people to snitch. Learning this at 15 years old, hanging out with guys with SKSs, which are like the cheap AK-47s at the time, like, AK, whatever. We had guns and I'm hanging around with all these guys. And yeah, man, I bought in hook, line, and sinker when they, I'll tell you, there's some things that you hear, like I remember growing up when I was a little kid and just around my neighborhood. Now I grew up in a very ethnic, all Irish Catholic neighborhood, in my mom's neighborhood, and then a mixed neighborhood in my dad's neighborhood. You hear things like people say, if you picked up a penny, they go, oh, what are you, a Jew? Everyone laugh. If the guy at the store didn't give you the right change back, oh, it's because Johnny's always trying to Jew you. And I never got the joke when I was a kid. I asked my uncle one time, I said, what's that mean? What's it mean when you said Johnny tried to Jew you? He goes, well, see, Frank, the Jews were kind of notorious for money. And you know what, Frank, you'll get the joke when you're older. Like, you just won't, you'll get it when you're old. And when I first started hanging out with these neo-Nazi groups, and they started telling me about how the Jews secretly run the Federal Reserve, and we're sitting in these meetings, 14 years old, and you're talking to me about the Federal Reserve. I'm 49. I still don't know what the Federal Reserve is. What the hell are you talking about, right? I don't know what the Federal Reserve is. But when these guys are talking about how the Jews secretly run the Federal Reserve, it unlocked the joke. I remember that moment going, oh, that's why they say don't Jew me. Oh, I must be older now because my uncle said I'll get the joke when I'm older. Wait a minute now, like these guys must be speaking the truth. These people know the truth because my uncle told me. I figured this shit out. When you have those type of moments where you're like, oh, okay, I get it. And I was like, these guys know the truth about life. My life at the time sucked, and here these guys are telling me this is how I'll feel better about myself, man, is if I stand up for the white race. Because you hear it a lot today. I just want to be proud to be white. If I say I'm proud to be white, then I'm considered a racist. And I hear that still to this day when I talk. Now, it's a lie because the Irish neighborhood I came from, if you go down there, they're all proud to be Irish. And if you go over to the Italian neighborhood, they're all proud to be Italian. It's when we say this proud to be white thing because this white thing has been tied in with oppression. So I get it now. At the time, I don't get it. But I hear men say, you know, if I say I'm proud to be white, then I'm considered a racist. And if they have BET, why don't we have white entertainment television? Again, reality. All television is white entertainment television. So BET sounds cool. White entertainment television acronym doesn't seem like it would be an acronym for regular TV.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't. You're right.
It's more of an adult network, right? When I would hear a man talking like that, or a teenager, because I was still a teenager at the time, and I would hear them saying, like, I just want to be proud to be white. I say, come join our groups. This is how I got good at recruiting, right? Because I say, yo, I know exactly what you're talking about. Come join our group. That's what our group's all about. Come to our meeting. Well, guess what? When you go to neo-Nazi or any of these far-right group meetings, guess what we never do? We never talk about our heritage. We talk about those. Why are those people messing everything up? Look at those people. They're destroying what we built. It's never like, hey, John McLemore or whatever made this great thing for humanity. We don't ever talk like that. Never. It's always like Hitler, Mussolini, Rockwell, all these people that we know that were like neo-Nazis who hated others. That's who we have pride in. But at the time, I don't see that what I was doing was helping pull the greatest bait and switch. And those groups are all about the greatest bait and switch. Let me take your false pride because you want to be proud to be white. Let me take that false pride and then hand you back some hate. And it's the greatest bait and switch pulled on mankind.
Where you stand on faith. Everything you're describing to me about that culture of being a neo-Nazi sounds like a cult.
It is.
It's just different maybe because it doesn't have the religious maybe element to it, but it feels like a cult. It feels like very cultish in their ingredients, if you will, of their group.
And I think when we look at a lot of different things, you can always use the cult word. Anything that's not mainstreamy in a way, I would say yes. And look, Hitler and all those guys were totally into the cult stuff. I don't know the history of anything. It is. But it all goes back to this myth. That's what I like to tell people. Like when I'm like going to do a speaking engagement somewhere, I always go, hey, let me start out with a joke. So the joke is that at one time, I believe because of the color of my skin, I was better than another human being. That's the joke. Racism is a joke. Now, I honestly, for 6 years of my life, 7 years of my life, fully believed that statement I just said, that because of the color of my skin, God loved me more and I was better than other human beings walking this planet. And it sounds so stupid now when you put it that way. It really is the fact. And it's not, obviously, it's not true.
There's a lot of people that feel that way.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of people that feel that way on the other side of the fence, too. I would imagine that there are Nation of Islam people, or maybe even Muslim people in general, that may feel that way. Now, again, I'm making a broad statement.
Yeah,
sweeping brushstroke.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's throughout, it's in every religion. It's in every ethnic background. It's in every group. This way of, again, and this is where I talk about, it's about low self-esteem and low self-worth. Because if I had really felt good self-esteem and good self-worth about myself, I don't need to hate anybody. I just need to go out and do the best I can today as a human being and make my world a better place and let God fix all the other stuff. I need to go out and prove that you're bad and you're wrong and you're trying to destroy my country. I don't need to do that. I just need to go out, and if I have good self-worth and I feel good about myself and I have good self-esteem, I don't need to go out and hate. I just go out and do the best job I can and be of service today. And that's the life I live today, obviously. I'm living on a service plane.
What was the moment when you look back on your time as a neo-Nazi that you're like, okay, this can't be my life from here forward?
People like to have me on their show and they're like, let's get into the nitty gritty. Tell me every time you swung a hammer at somebody or put a gun in someone's face. I did a lot of that stuff. I have a book out, my autobiography, Recovering Skinhead. Not here to pimp my book. I talk about a lot of the violence in that book. I eventually actually go to prison. I was 17 years old, kidnapped another man. People today would say Antifa. Probably heard of Antifa. So I kidnapped one of their members, held them for ransom, and didn't work out so well, and had to let him go. And in Illinois at the time, in Springfield, Illinois, 17-year-old kid. Nobody knows where I am. My parents don't know where I am. No one knows my world knew where I was. I was just traveling with these neo-Nazi groups. Anyhow, I'm out in Springfield and kidnapped this guy. I had my own cable access show at the time. That was the podcasting of the day back in the 90s. This is early. I had my own cable access show called The Right, me and another guy, promoting and recruiting off of cable access at the time in Springfield. It was at the time called Sangamon County Community College. That's where the TV station was. We kidnapped the guy. We release him. The cops find out about the kidnapping and they want to come arrest me. They arrest me at the next taping of my TV show. So they caught me. Go to prison. While I'm in prison, I go through a lot. They charged me as an adult, even though I was 17. They charged me as an adult, and probably good idea. I don't second guess it now. So I was in the hole because I was so young. And this county jail is that they were holding me in the wait for my trial wasn't like Mayberry. It was a huge county jail, tons of cell blocks. I mean, it's a huge building in downtown Springfield. I was in the hole for a while. While I was in the hole, I started talking to myself in segregation. For anyone who needs to know what the hole is. So I was in the hole just for my own age because they didn't know what to do with me. I was the youngest kid in there, and they were just like, let's keep him in the hole, keep him away from the other inmates. But that will drive you crazy. That's why a lot of people have come out and said that, that segregation isn't good for other human beings. Now, I know there's people that probably listen, and there's people in the world that go, too bad. You shouldn't be out in trouble then. Look, are we going to be people that let our government, others treat other human beings, knowing that one day I'm going to get back out into society? I want to rethink the way we've been doing the segregation and the whole thing. In fact, right after I got out of prison, there was a federal law passed that you needed to at least let somebody out of a cell an hour a day. At the time, they didn't have that rule. It was never allowed out. Just to go shower once in a while. While I was in there awaiting trial, I remember I read religious books. And I read like the Book of Mormons. Now, again, when I was part of these neo-Nazi groups, we were a Christian group. We were taught how to hate through Christianity. So I remember I read the Book of Mormons, and then I started reading the Bible again. And what I would do is I would like hold the Bible shut. I go, yo, God, whatever's in this book, let me find it now. And I throw the book on the bed, and whatever page it opened up to, that's what I read. And I remember reading a part about fasting, where it says, God, if you refast, God will reveal himself to you. So I'm like, bet. But it says you cannot brag or boast that you're fasting for God. Like, just shut your mouth, which isn't easy for me. That's not easy for me, but I'll do this. So I start fasting one day. It was a Friday. And I said, I'm going to fast Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now, in the county jail, you're always hungry. If they don't feed you enough, I know, again, people who care, you're an inmate, they weren't feeding us enough. And I was always hungry. Always hungry. One of the hardest parts about doing that jail time at the time was I was always hungry. I was like, all right, I'm not going to eat for 3 days. So I start fasting. After like the second day, I was in the cell block where they opened up a little metal slot and then they slide your food through to you. Well, I would slide the food back out. I was like, I don't want it. And they say, are you refusing to eat? And I say, yep. And they say, okay. And they shut my thing and lock the door. And so 3 days of this, the lieutenant who runs the county jail, called him like the warden, but he was just like the lieutenant. The lieutenant pulls me out of my cell. Now, my case is high profile. Again, the neo-Nazi kidnapping TV show was on the news all the time. My case was always on the news about the kidnapping. It was a high profile case. He pulls me out of my cell and he's like, why are you not eating? Now, again, I am asking, my fast was for God for a favor. I was crazy at the time. And I said, if I don't eat for 3 days, God, I want you to kill all the guards. And I want you to let me go home. Like, splitting of the sea here. This is what I'm asking for. And I want you to kill all the guards. And I want you to pop my door. And I want you to knock down the walls. And I want you to let me go home. That's what I'm going to do this for. So for 3 days, I'm not eating. So when he asked me why I'm not eating, remember, I can't tell him. It says, do not brag or boast. I won't tell him why. But I felt like telling him, like, yo, you better say your goodbyes tonight because tomorrow there's some stuff going down, man. I'm out of here. But I don't say that. I keep my mouth shut. So he says, why are you not eating? And I said, it's not eating. He says, are you trying to kill yourself? I was like, oh, no. He's like, are you on a hunger strike? I'm like, no. Well, how about this, Mr. Meeink? If you eat tomorrow, I'll put you in general population. I don't think you need to be in the segregation hole. You know, they used to call it the hole. I was like, you don't need to be in seg anymore. And I remember looking at him. I was just like, okay. It's like, for you, warden? Sure, I'll eat tomorrow. Now, again, I'd already planned on eating. So I just plan. I'm like, sure, for you, you got it. The next day I eat, and he comes and gets me right away. Like as soon as I ate my breakfast, which I was starving, and he comes and he gets me, and I'm getting all my stuff together. And there was this moment, man, just a moment right then and there where I had this feeling where, for one, that God is real. God didn't give me what I wanted. So I'm insane at the time. But he's going to give me what I need. I'm not going to give you what you want. I'll give you what you need. And what you need right now is to get out of a cell block where you're talking to yourself and going insane. So he puts me in the general population. And I was in this place called the H block. It was called the honors block. And so it's a bunch of inmates who are all waiting trial, a lot of high profile, whatever, some federal inmates waiting on federal trial. So it's all people that are trying to be good. They got trials coming up and they're not looking for no trouble in the jail. So they're all on good terms. And they're like, I just want to stay here and do my time and no troublemakers type thing. And I get on this cell block and there's a couple of y'all that are young, like black kids in there, maybe in and around my age, maybe a little bit older than me. I remember like just sitting down my first day, and this one black kid just came over and was like, yo, you know how to play spades, the card game? And I was like, no. He's like, let me show you. So we're just sitting there, he's flipping cards with me, starts showing me. Another kid comes over, we're all talking, they're showing me how to play the game of spades. And he's also showing me how to cheat playing cards, like put little hand signs up, tell me to come back in diamonds, come back in clubs. We had this whole little thing. It's sign language down to cheat. As we were in this cell block I was in there for a couple of months waiting trial, we used to play all the old heads, the older guys, we call them the old heads. We used to play the old heads for their peanut butter and jellies, because every morning we got breakfast and a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That was the thing. And to this day, I've always loved peanut butter and jelly. It's probably my favorite food of all time, peanut butter and jelly. We used to play for peanut butter and jellies against these old heads, and we'd cheat and we'd just win all day. And then next morning, every morning, man, we'd have a stack of peanut butter and jellies because everyone had to pay us. So me and him are cool. I wound up getting 3-year bit in state prison. They sent me up to state prison for aggravated kidnapping. So while I'm up in state prison with the big boys, the first prison I go to is a place called Menard, which had John Wayne Gacy in it at the time. I don't know if you remember who John Wayne Gacy was. He was the serial killer.
No, I do. I remember him. Yeah.
So I'm in the same prison with this dude. Now he's on death row and I don't ever see the guy. By the time I got upstate prison, I knew that I'm a very well protected neo-Nazi. I had a TV show. I was like a little celebrity in there. And I had a big swastika tattooed on my neck at the time and neo-Nazi tattoos everywhere. I wasn't one of these white guys that got into prison was like, oh, I'm outnumbered. I need to join a gang. I was preaching for this gang before I even went in prison. So I'm well protected.
The thing about your story of what you're talking about of being in the hold and reading Book of Mormon, obviously setting that aside, maybe not realizing or maybe not thinking, okay, there's truth here or there's something here, and then moving on to the Bible. What interests me most about what you said is you talk about being a Christian and how even in your organization, you believed you were Christians. The struggle I have is Christianity has its roots in Judaism. All of Jesus's disciples were Jews. Oh, and newsflash, Jesus was a Jew.
Yeah.
How does that work?
How it works, they believe, some of them, there's a whole Christian conservatism today. There were that times maybe 5, not much further from Christian conservatism. We believe that in a couple of different ways. Some groups believe that the lost tribes of Israel, the 12 lost tribes, were actually all Europeans, which factually doesn't work at all when you read the book. I know that. Some just believe that after Jesus came, he was proving that the Jews were wrong. The Jews were wrong in what they believed. They actually call it the synagogue of Satan.
That has Mormon origin, by the way, is they believe in the Mormon book, if I'm not mistaken, my Mormon haters can come and tell me that I'm wrong. They believe that that's what started the Jaredite movement, or the Jaredite tribe sailed from Israel to what is now considered the New World, aka America, and they settled it. And that's where the Lamanites and the Nephites came from.
Right.
That's the Mormon origin story.
Yes.
And that was considered a lost tribe, by the way. So when you said that, it made me think of Mormon.
Here's where you go back to the earliest story of Adam and Eve, how Eve doesn't get tricked to have a piece of fruit in their version. Like, it's not like God, the devil comes to her and says, yo, you should have some of this fruit, the fruit of knowledge, even though God said, don't know. Even though that story doesn't work, mankind doesn't know between good and bad. Then she doesn't even know that even though God said, don't eat from the tree, this is what I think now too. If God said, don't eat from this tree, she still doesn't know it's good or bad because we don't know between good or bad. What we were told was, and this is what I was told as in the neo-Nazis, is that the serpent comes to Eve and he doesn't get her to have a piece of fruit. He gets her to have the forbidden fruit. He gets to have sex with her. He impregnates her with Cain. Now, her and Adam have never done the forbidden fruit yet. So when she knows when she has sex with this demon, serpent, devil man, so she has to run back now and get Adam to partake in this fruit with her so that she can trick him, because it's always the woman's fault. It's always the woman's fault, is that she's going to trick him now and think that Cain is his. So now we have the first Maury Povich episode.
The DNA reveals you are the dad.
Yeah. So when Cain is born, he is actually of the devil. And later on, he kills Abel. Well, they say that Cain is the first evil Jew on the planet. That's why they call it the synagogue of Satan.
Ah, okay. I follow that now. I never knew that before, by the way. That's brand new. I was today years old when I heard that. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I was born and raised Irish Catholic, and I made all my sacraments as
That pushed right up against that, I bet.
And I remember saying to these ministers or older neo-Nazis who were teaching me and stuff, I remember going like, why didn't Father Wassel and Sister Mary Agnes ever teach me this? And they say, oh, because they're all Jew-worshipping religions. This is real.
So is Jesus a Jew in the neo-Nazi religion, if you will?
The group that I was with, yes, he was. He was trying to change Jews from worshiping Satan. And
Interesting.
They wouldn't listen.
Interesting.
And that's why they killed him, right?
And that's why they killed him. Okay, that makes sense of why they killed him. Those people killed him. To use your verbiage, those people.
Yes. In prison, I'm in there, and I'm just kind of cool with everybody. I just happen to be blessed. Maybe it was the fasting. I don't know. God made my prison time kind of easy. I was in the Illinois Department of Corrections, so you have all prisons from Chicago, East St. Louis. It's rough. Cool with all my Aryans. I was well protected, well thought of, well-considered neo-Nazi, ran with all the big bikers and was cool. They all thought I was funny, and there was this Philly kid who knew all the lingo. A lot of these white guys, they don't know all that stuff I explained to you. They don't know none of that. They just know they hate black, and they're in prison with them. And I'm like, no, there's this and that, and there's all these reasons. And they were like, whoa. And then when I hung with the black kids, because people, would think, why would I do that? There was a group of us that used to play cards even when I got up to state prison, and we played dominoes all the time. Whenever I had a free chance, I sat around with these other guys because they were my age. We laugh. I'm pretty funny. I don't know if you noticed that. I'm a pretty funny guy.
I think you are. Yeah.
We used to make each other laugh all the time, and just like we're kind of cool with each other. And I don't change in prison. This is an American History X. I didn't change in prison. I didn't get out. I still was a neo-Nazi and thought this is just life happening on life's terms. And I'm just in prison making the best of it. So I get released from prison. I'm still a neo-Nazi. I go back right back to my neo-Nazi friends on the side. I can't wait to go back. But there were a couple of things that started to stick with me. For one, I would be around neo-Nazis and I would hear them all say like, all black people are this way. And by this time, God, whatever, definitely God, put in my life where I was like, I had enough brains at the time to go, that's not true. Whenever they would say, all black people are this way. And I'd be like, but I didn't say that at a meeting. Now, I'm not the guy that's standing up at the neo-Nazi group going, guys, come on now. It's not all like that. I would hear it in my head going, that sounds stupid. That sounds dumb. And I also remembered, I would hear like all these black activists who used to always scream like, the prison system really hard on the black community. And I kidnapped somebody and I got 3 years in prison. G and Joe and some of the Tony and the other kids I was in prison with were black kids from Chicago and East St. Louis. They got caught selling crack and they were doing like 15, 16 years. I was putting guns in people's face and kidnapping them, and I only got 3. Maybe maybe they're right. The system is a little bit stacked against them. As I'm in the neo-Nazi world, I'm still trying to fight with this in my head. And when you have a big swastika on your neck and you have skinhead on your knuckles, tattoos now, I'm talking aggravated kidnapping on your record already. These ain't good people skills. People don't hire you going, oh, he has a swastika on his neck. Oh, it must be management. Fully management. He's got a swastika on his neck. People just don't hire you. A buddy of mine came to me and said, I can get you a job working at an antique show in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Do you want the job? And I said, yeah, I'll take the job. And then he goes, but I can tell you my boss is a Jew. Still want the job. And I said, man, I need the money. It was $100 a day. This is great. This was like 94. So that was good money. Carry in and out antique furniture at an antique show. He said, okay, he's a Jew. I said, well, did you tell him, going to this one, I'm like, did you tell him about me? He knows all about you. He doesn't give a rat's ass what you believe. Just don't break his furniture. That's all he said. So I showed up and I worked for this Jewish man. And I worked for him for a weekend. So 3 days. And he was a nice guy, super down to earth, funny, very, very funny guy. And he was a big Flyers fan. I'm a big Philadelphia Flyers fan, so we had that a little bit in common. When he got done that weekend, he had to pay me. And I remember thinking, like, here it comes. This is where he's going to Jew me. See, I made tons of money in tips. So I couldn't believe I was still making this $300 because I was getting paid a lot of money in tips for carrying out the furniture. And so I knew that he knew that I made money in that. And I thought he was going to say, well, you made your money. I don't need to pay you. We all have these moments, not anti-Semitic moments. I went to work on my last day, all day thinking about he's not going to give me what's mine. And I planned the argument in my head and I replayed the argument in my head. And I said, if he says this, then I'm going to say that. And if he says this, I'm going to say that. And I'm waiting till, and he's going to do this. And I plan out the whole big argument in my head. And there's a lot of us that do that. You drive to work and you're like, man, if I see so-and-so today and he's wearing that stupid Cowboys jersey, I'm going to give it to him because the Cowboys are stupid.
It's called scripting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's I had done that. And I call it having a resentment. I have expectations, which expectations are preset resentments. And I have put expectations on people. Well, anyway, I go to get paid and he pays me all my money. And I'm like, you son of a gun. Like, I had this whole fight waiting for you. I put out landmines waiting for you to step on them so that I can bounce on you and be like, rah, 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 rah. And here he pays me all my money. I'm like, son of a gun. So then he says, hey, do you have a ride? And I said, no. He said, I'll give you a ride back. He has a big truck. You don't really want to take a big truck down in South Philly. It's very small, narrow streets, all that good stuff. But he takes me back down there. And on the way there, we were having a nice talk. And he just said, so what do you do for a living? I said, nothing. This is like the only work I've had in a while. He says, why don't you come work for me? And I went and I worked for this man. Bringing up the current time, I just spent a weekend with that man again. We're still friends to this day. Again, this is 1994. So he hires me and he just was like this amazing man in my life. He also had drug and alcohol problems. I had alcohol problems. I was in recovery, thank God, today. Only due to God am I sober today. So I remember him talking about his drug and alcohol problems he had and how he started the business so he can stay sober. And he just put all of his mind into work. And if you did a good job, he paid you well and he always took care of you. And I'll tell you, man, during the O.J. Simpson trial, just to give you a little timetable of where this time was, we used to listen to on the news radio.
I appreciate that, by the way. I always appreciate when people do that because I can put myself back to where I was during those moments.
So during the O.J. Simpson trial, I'm driving in a truck. He has a whole warehouse full of men that work for him. I just happen to be the one guy that always goes in. He used to pick me all the time to go in the truck because we used to have these really deep conversations and stuff. And I was still a neo-Nazi. And we listened to the O.J. Simpson trial on news radio and talk about DNA and all this new stuff that was being talked about, crazy stuff. And we just had these low self-esteem, low self-worth. I might be making it, but I still have it. And so if I broke something or if I did something that made me feel like I was stupid, I would say, oh, I'm so stupid. And I used to say that to Keith. Keith would always say, you're smart. And he used to always tell me all the time, like I would say something about life. And he'd always be like, wow, that's smart, Frank. You might not have book smarts, but you got smart. And so one day, again, I said I was stupid about something. I broke something. And Keith just looked at me and I said, man, I'm so stupid. I'm so sorry. And he was like, stop saying you're stupid, you idiot. You're one of the smartest people I've gotten to work with. And he looked at me and this one time it stuck. And he looked at me and said, Frank, smart people can fake being dumb. Dumb people can't fake being smart. You just are. And I just remember it's like, this was the first real time someone had ever really, that I remembered in my life, other than my football coaches that were always like, you're really good. You need to know you're really good. Like I didn't know how good I was at football, but I was really, really good as a kid. I was a star athlete as a kid. So there was the only other times I remember my coaches saying like, you're really good. But this was him saying this to me. And I just remember looking at this guy. I'm still a neo-Nazi that day. And he dropped me off that day after we dropped off some furniture. And he dropped me off. He paid me. It was a Friday. And he didn't take any money out for me breaking the furniture, whatever it was I broke. And I got out of the truck and I had to walk back to my mom's house. And that night, I could have went and hung out with my neo-Nazi friends, or I was going to walk back down the way. And I'm going to tell you that before I got to that moment, there have been weeks now that I've been working for this man. He would drop me off some days and I go hang out with my neo-Nazi buddies. And I hear them talk about like they would put a bullet in any dirty Jew's head. And I remember thinking like, I would take a bullet for Keith. Hear them say stuff like that. If I got put a bullet in any Jew's head, and I'd be like, I'd probably take a bullet for that Jew. That day, instead of walking to go meet up with my neo-Nazi friends, I just walked back to my mom's. And I just remember contemplating like, how am I going to do this? Like, I don't want to be a neo-Nazi anymore. I got tired of being, and this is what we get in America all the time. I call it American racism, or Walmart American racism is, I hate all black people except for John, Michael, Craig, because I know them guys. I went to school with them. I work with them. So-and-so, I've been to them, grew up around this guy. Great guy. He's a good guy. But all the rest of them, they're the way I think they are. I hate all Latinos, except for Juan and John and Michael and whatever. Like I hate all that. I hate them all because they all do this, this, and this, except for the ones that I know. The ones that I have a relationship with. I know I love them guys. I like them guys. But the rest of them felt so idiotic being the racist that made exceptions for my racism. So that was the day, man. I just walked home and I was like, I'm not going to spew this stuff anymore. I'm not going to call myself a neo. I know I'm stuck with the swastika on my neck. Like I'm just not going to identify as a neo-Nazi anymore. And I walked home that day and I remember there was just this moment where I was just like, this isn't what life's about for me. I gotta change. That was my final day.
Frank, first off, I want to say thanks for what you shared, that I wish somebody had loved you, really loved you as a child. And again, I'm not saying your parents didn't. They probably tried to love you the best they knew how.
That's it.
And that's it. I'm not throwing rocks at them by any means because I don't know them. Obviously, I don't know them personally. What your story reminds me of, and I don't know if you know this guy or not, or have ever heard of this guy. His name's Francis Chan. He's kind of big in the evangelical space. He's a world-renowned speaker, and he talks about how he took a church. I think he's Filipino, not that that matters any. He talks about how he took a church, I think in California, and the church was reaching out to gang members, Crips and Bloods. And they were bringing them into the church. People in the church were appalled. Oh my gosh, you can't have those people. Those people, again, going back to that word, right? That phrasing, those people. You can't have those people in our church. We don't want those people in our church. And there was one kid in particular that he friended and really ministered to and discipled. And it's like this guy that you're talking about in the van and in the moving company and pouring into you and really seeing you and really building you up. Francis Chan has a similar experience with one of these gang members. And then one day in particular, he notices that this gang member's gone. Like he's not in the church, he's left, he's not in the groups, he's gone. So he goes to find him, and he finds him back with the gang. And he's like, listen, let's just call him Johnny because I don't even think he references the person's name, but for our story. Johnny, why aren't you coming to church anymore? And Johnny's response to Francis Chan is, they accept me. The gang accepts me. They want me here. They love me. They want me to be a part of things. And Francis Chan is blown away because he doesn't understand why, and he uses the word Christian, why the Christian church isn't that way, why the church in general isn't that way. Because we see somebody and they're not one of our people. They're one of those people. Those people don't have value, so I have no value for them. Those people have no right to a conversation, so I don't want to be around them. Those people can't come sit at my table. Those people can't eat and associate with me. Those people can't do that. And it's amazing to me that you're talking about that, and I feel like that's what we do a lot. I think people do that in general. They're like, you're not part of my group. I don't have time for you. You don't believe the same as I do. I can't have that conversation with you. I can't put on those shoes, I would say. I can't wear them. I won't wear them. Now, I notice this because we're on video. Now, those people that aren't, they're just listening to us. They don't see this. But you don't have the swastika on your neck anymore. You don't have the markings of a skinhead anymore. You have a full head of hair even, which, by the way, it looks very good today. By the way, it's on point.
Thank you. Thank you.
Where did that transformation take place?
After I got out of the neo-Nazis, the Oklahoma City bombing happens. While I was out of the neo-Nazis.
Terrible tragedy, by the way.
That came from my movement. I was around people. That's when people say, how radical I was. If I was in a neo-Nazi compound and they said, hey, here's the key to a U-Haul. We're going to go start the race war by blowing up a federal building. I would have said, give me the keys. Give me the keys. That's where I was.
So the people you were around, did they celebrate what McVeigh did?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's terrible.
There's a lot of people to this. Yeah, there's people to this day, man. You can go to some of the, unfortunately, man, you can go to some of the gun shows, man, and they sell T-shirts with McVeigh's face on it. And then there's other groups that scream that he was a left winger, so they can say that it was the lefties that did it. But I knew of those same people and hung around the same groups that he hung around. After the Oklahoma City bombing, I went to the FBI. Now I had been out of the movement probably 6 months at the time and just went in to go talk to them about where I've been in my life. Not to snitch on no one. It wasn't like a snitching thing. It was like, I need to unload my life. Where I was living at in South Philly with all my neighborhood friends, because I was blessed, man. I was really, really blessed when I got out of the neo-Nazis. I went right back to my mom's neighborhood with guys I played football with. Like I had a lot of other friends. I know a lot of neo-Nazis that didn't have that. They don't have that, but I did. After the Oklahoma City bombing, I talked with the FBI. The FBI pointed me in the direction and had me meet up with some civil rights group. The civil rights group said, hey, would you come speak to some kids for us? So when I spoke to some kids, and I felt good about myself. It wasn't the greatest. I didn't have a message back then. I didn't know what it was. The first few times I went out and spoke in front of kids, man, all I did was talk about the violence, and I had no message. Basically scarred children, I believe. I just happened to do it in a good, funny way. Whatever reason, people say I'm charismatic, I guess. But I didn't want to be one of these guys who just went around and talked. So I started a hockey program with the Philadelphia Flyers. So for a Philly kid, that's like a kid who lives in New York and getting a job with the Yankees.
That's a dream come true.
Yeah. I started working for the Flyers, teaching more black kids how to play the game of hockey. Because I said, look, I use sports in prison. I want to do it now. And so I worked for this program called Harmony Through Hockey, which is now the Ed Snyder Foundation, which is like helped thousands and thousands of kids. But the Ed Snyder Foundation was started off of harmony through hockey.
To me, that is such a redemptive thing to do, that you have this kind of mindset shift. It doesn't just happen overnight. Like you don't wake up and, okay, now I love Jews. I love black people. I love Mexicans. I love all these other people. It's kind of this slow moving train to get you to realize and recognize that the ideology that you were so much ingrained in and in a sense brainwashed into has now had this effect on you to change your life in a more positive direction. When you look at your lifespan and you look back over your life, because you're older now, that 17-year-old you is gone. Is there anyone in your heart that you feel like, man, if I could go back in time and seek forgiveness from who?
I live a life today of recovery. So I've gone back and made amends to like the man I kidnapped. Like I actually went back and made an amends to him. Most of the people in my life, I have gone back. Growing up, going to an all-black school, I obviously had some black friends. I mean, my dad's neighborhood's very mixed. I went back and made amends to them, actually. You know, I was like, yo, man, I'm sorry I turned my back on you. So most people I think that I have, that I've thought about, I've already, by the grace of God, I've been able to go back and make an amends to them. And amends for me today, too, is not, it's different than just going back and be like, hey, look, I'm sorry. An amends is where I go back and I try to amend the relationship, try to bring the relationship back to equal ground with each other. The reason why I got the tattoos taken off, God looking out for me, man. The newspaper article came out about me and about doing a hockey program. This woman reached out to us from the University of Pennsylvania Hospital and said, hey, I'd like to talk to Frank about something. I went up and I visited her, and she said, I'd like to help you take this tattoo off your neck. I said, well, I can't afford you. I'm a hockey coach, and I barely make any money. And she said, well, I'm one of the best in the world at dermatology, at doing laser surgeries, and you can't afford me, so don't worry about that. She said, teacher at University of Pennsylvania Hospital, it's an Ivy League school, and they have a hospital. She says, all my resident doctors have only shot in cadavers, dead people with the laser, which would be their first live person that they ever shoot, and will not charge you. And I was like, absolutely, let's do it. I get real into civil rights. I got real into combating the hatred that I came from. Very, very, like I started doing interventions on other neo-Nazis. I helped found a very famous organization now, a very popular organization called Life After Hate. I was one of the founders, which is an organization that is built just to get people out of the movement. And I was one of the first people in the world ever doing interventions on neo-Nazis, doing all this great work. Coming from where I came from, I have alcoholism. I have the disease of alcoholism. I have it really, really bad. It would still pop up. And if anyone knows about the disease of alcoholism, they say in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, actually, just to tell you what it says, not promoting it, it says that we find that the root of our problem is selfishness and self-centeredness. That's the real root of our problem. I didn't mean to be a selfish person. I didn't mean to be that way. I just was from years of being around alcoholism my whole life and drug addiction. I would struggle, even in the civil rights world. I had some amazing jobs other than just doing like this. Hey, I used to be a neo-Nazi. Now I'm getting neo-Nazis out. I also worked in professional hockey. I worked at ESPN radio. I worked for news radio stations. I went out and achieved all these other great things. Like I would go out and I wrote a book and I, did a bunch of other amazing things. Worked for many different hockey organizations. I was a hockey coach. I won 12 national championships as a hockey coach. Not in the harmony through hockey realm, just in real hockey, meaning like competitive AAA elite hockey. I became this hockey coach, but I kept messing up, and I got married and I had some kids. And just telling you this because this is where people will get this, is that what I kept doing was I would build up this big, beautiful life. I would get 2-3 years sober, and then I burned it down to the ground again. And I kept doing it. And I kept doing it. I didn't know why. I just, I didn't know why at the time. And about 2014, 2019, if you looked at my life, you would think I had this amazing, I was married with children. I lived in Iowa in a big house on a plot of land. And I was coaching and traveling all around the country, coaching and winning championships and still helping out on civil rights. And my son died in a car accident when he was 19. In 2014. Then my mom dies of a fentanyl overdose. Then the best man at my wedding, my cousin, who was like a brother to me, one of my other cousins, he kills himself. And then his older brother, who was also like my older brother, he kills himself due to the disease of alcoholism. And then a colleague of mine at my civil rights company really did me dirty. And it really hurt. I kind of lost the civil rights organization. Then me and my wife go through a divorce. And it was a really nasty, nasty divorce. Extramarital affairs everywhere. Through this 5 years thing, I was making documentaries with Steven Spielberg. I was doing all this crazy stuff, and I kept
And then when all that bad stuff that started happening, man, I relapsed again, and I burnt my life to the ground. Lost both careers. In the time now I'm a civil rights activist for 15 years. And then I found out I was Jewish. Through DNA and through life tree stuff, I find out that I'm Ashkenazi Jewish. And I'd struggled with religion, and I struggled with everything I come up with. I've been struggling with a relationship with God. I'm very much struggling with a relationship with God. So one day I'm in the middle of this divorce, and I'm dating this Jewish girl because now I'm like, oh, I'm going to look into this Jewish thing. And I happen to meet this Jewish woman. She was amazing, great person I met and it was during the midst of my divorce. Me and her start dating, and I left her house one day, and I was driving back over to my buddy's house because I wasn't allowed to go back to my house because of the divorce. As I was driving, the whole last 5 years just collapsed on top of me in the car. Like, I mean, it all just hit me for the first time. I just started bawling, crying in my car. And I couldn't drive anymore because I couldn't see because I was crying so bad, and it's a horrible scene, crying. And I pulled over to the side of the road, and I started screaming up to God. I was like, yo, just kill me, man. I can't take this no more. Please just kill me right now. Let a Mack truck hit me. Let a telephone pole. I don't want to kill myself because I've seen the end result of that, and I know my kids will just suffer more if I kill myself. But please just kill me. And as I'm screaming up for God to kill me, as I'm screaming, crying in this car, my phone rings, and it's that girl. I'm going to pick up the phone, and as I say hello, she's screaming, crying on the phone. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? And I was like, what's wrong? And she said, get back to my house. And I said, why? What's wrong? And she said, get back to my house right now. My sister just killed herself. The middle of me screaming about me wanting to die so bad. And as I hung up my phone, and this is my story, it doesn't matter because since the day I listened to this voice, my life has changed dramatically. When I hung up the phone with the girl, this voice came into my car, and it just said, get to California. I have work for you. It's all the voice said. I remember looking at my dashboard and answering the voice saying, okay, okay. I hung up the phone. I went over to the girl's house and recovery meeting one day. And when I lived in Los Angeles, for a small period of time working on a television show. And I did this TV show, but it never made it there. It only made it to its pilot season where I did interventions on neo-Nazis. Well, I was in LA making that show. So this guy came over to me at a recovery meeting, came up to me and said, "How, fellow Heeb at a meeting?" And I said, "I'm not Jewish." This is before I knew I was Jewish. I said, "I'm not Jewish. I'm actually a former neo-Nazi. And I'm doing a TV show here in LA about that." He looked at me and said, "Well, you're like Heeb to me." And we swapped phone numbers. Stayed in touch over the years. So when that voice said, go to California, because he would always talk to me very real about the disease of alcohol. So he used to say stuff like, you got this disease really bad. I would just sporadically call this man over the years when I lived in Iowa. I'd call back to LA just to talk to him. And he'd always say, man, you have this disease really bad. Whenever you're ready for help, let me know. That voice saying going to California, he popped in my head. And so I called him and said, hey, will you work with me? I moved out to LA so that man would become like my recovering rabbi, teach me all about recovery. And he's still my recovering rabbi to this day. He's my spiritual advisor. I started to practice Judaism. Today I'm a practicing Jew.
That's quite the journey, man. It's quite the metamorphosis. Yeah. Even I'm glad that it sounds like you have found your way back to a level of being able to not only forgive yourself, but really forgive others. I keep hearing from people, especially in this series that we're in, this Unmade series, some people bring up forgiveness, or even in past shows, people will talk about forgiveness. And one lady in particular said the hardest person she's ever had to forgive was herself. Is that true of you, do you feel like?
I do. My spiritual guide has really trained my brain. So now I've been sober now 5 years. It's clean and sober. I work an amazing program, which is a major part of my life. And I got to say this before I say about the forgiveness part, is that recovery and my religious practices fit in my life. And today my life fits around those things. The reason why I say that is because my spiritual advisor told me something. I'd done a lot of bad things, especially in my drinking and drugging and in my neo-Nazi years and all that stuff, and betrayed a lot of people and broke a lot of people's hearts. And when I'm walking and I think about those things, spiritual guide will say to me, Frank, you just got to remember that you were so spiritually sick that you didn't know no better. And even though you know that you know better, like I knew not to take money out of my kid's piggy bank. I knew not to do that, but I really didn't know not to do that because I wouldn't have done it if I knew. And there's just a lot of those times where I just always go, Frank, you were so spiritually sick, man. You didn't know no better. You didn't know no better. As every morning, I live right by the beach. I live the most amazing life. I'm about to get married to an amazing woman, but I live right by the beach now. And I'm a Philadelphia welfare kid. That's how good my life is. And I walk the beach every morning and I pray. I do a God walk before I go to work every morning, about an hour and a half. On that God walk, I always use the word stay, S-T-A-Y. Y, and you can use this, anyone can use it. God gave it to me on my God walk one day. And STAY stands for stop thinking about yourself. So whenever I'm walking the beach for an hour and a half every morning, there's going to be times where I'm going to think, why didn't Johnny text me back yesterday? You know what, man? F Johnny. You know what? I'm tired. You know what? And I know Johnny thinks this about me, because if he didn't think that, he would have texted me back yesterday, but he didn't text me back yesterday. When now I start to go, my brain starts to go selfish and self-centered. And then I got to remember, you know why Johnny didn't text me back? Because Johnny has a life. And Johnny just couldn't get back to me yesterday. And it wasn't nothing personal. And I don't need to take things personal anymore. I just got to wake up and just live a life of servitude today. And that God, Hashem, will take care of everything else. If I just wake up today and do my best to be of service to other alcoholics and other drug addicts, to other former neo-Nazis or people that want to get out of the movement, and to whatever comes across my path today, and to be a well-educated person enough that I can help other people suffering. Because a guy who has maybe 1 day sober, 2 days sober, and just got kicked out of his house, and he's sitting at a gathering somewhere, and I go and I'm there and I meet up with them. I have the most powerful thing that we get to say to one another is, me too, man, me too. That's one of my main things. I think that my God, through my practices, through our Bill of Rights and through being an American, we have a right to be activists. And I'm a really big activist. God that I serve, that I know is 1,000,000% real, is not okay with mass incarceration. He's not okay with the punishment of the poor that we tend to do here. Give some of your listeners numbers that are insane that we need to look at. Is that if you take all the women that are in prison in the world, all the women, every woman that's in prison right now in the world, America has 30% of that women prison population. America is only 5% of the population in this country. But we have 30% of the world's women's prison population. One of the things I got to do in 2020 was government called me and said, hey, we heard that you know a bunch of neo-Nazis that became cops. And now this isn't going to be an anti-cop thing here. I just want people to understand that. A lot of neo-Nazis and a lot of the far right want to become cops. It's like the dream job to have, because you get to do things to people of color and get away with it. Like, that's what we used to talk about. When I used to be at these neo-Nazi rallies and compounds, they used to talk about us joining the military, come home and become a cop. And then, so I knew a bunch of people that did that, a handful, close people that I knew of that did that. And so I went and I testified in front of Congress about this, and my life was threatened. This was all during the pandemic. So I went and I lived on a boat. They can't find you. And it was like my ashram. I got very serious about my Judaism and my practices, and I got very serious about police reform, talking about police reform and talking about traffic stops. I mean, one of the things, like, you want to talk about being in other people's shoes, man. Our fellow Americans who happen to be black and brown, their life flashes before their eyes when them red and blue lights come on behind them. There's over almost 55,000 traffic stops a day in America. And just so everyone knows, also, there's over 8 million Americans arrested in 2023. I haven't seen the numbers for 2024 yet. 2023, there was over 8 million Americans arrested for possession of small amounts of marijuana, or for marijuana, period. 2.3% of our population was arrested for marijuana, and almost all of that was at traffic stops. War on drugs, that is a racist war on drugs. That's why people keep screaming it. They're not lying to us. They're not nitpicking. They're being honest with us. And it's time for us all to stand up and be like, and I know that we hear a lot. You hear about Thurgood Marshall, you hear about Malcolm X, you hear about, you name it, Martin Luther King, Fred Hampton. You listen to all these great black speakers and great black leaders, and all of them collectively always talked about police brutality. Like, they're not lying to us.
How can people find you, Frank, and find out more about your work?
Look me up on any social media. And then also I have like YouTube stuff. Just look me up. Just worst thing you can say, but it's the truth, is just Google me. You'll find me. Just Google me.
That's cool, though. It's cool to say that. I want to ask you one thing before we wrap up, and that's this. Why did you want to do this show? Why was that important to you in your mind?
Because right now in this country, man, we're going through a lot. There's a huge divide between us all. One of my other jobs today is I do a lot of teaching people their right. I do it in Watts and in LA and Compton. And I just want us all to realize, man, that we all have a Bill of Rights. I believe a gift from God is the Bill of Rights. And that if we all stand on the Bill of Rights for others, and I like to talk about that. So I wanted to come on your show, man, because I want people to know that we can do this. We can do this together. Is fix some of the real problems that we have in this country, but it's going to take all of us together. No matter if you're conservative, no matter if you're a liberal, it doesn't matter, man. If we all stand on these Bill of Rights, that every one of us deserves the Bill of Rights, this country will pull together and move on together and become the place that we want it all to be. When you ask me to do the show, man, to me, it's always about activism and for one, also talking about God's love. If anyone ever wants to get a hold of me and tell me their stories about how God has loved them in their life, I'd love it. Let's talk. I love hearing about people's stories about how they found God's love and then they spread that God's love around.
I like your acronym on STAY. Stop thinking about yourself. That was new to me today as well. Frank, I just want to say thanks so much. Appreciate what you shared, and your ability to get us in your shoes, I think, was masterful. So thank you for that. I appreciate that, man.
No problem. Thank you for having me on.
All right, guys and gals, kids and campers alike. That is it. That is all. Wow. I mean what I say. That was new to me. How about you? Are you today years old when you heard the word stay? Stop thinking about yourself. I'm a victim of it. I am guilty of it. I do that quite often. I think about myself probably way too much. In fact, my wife said to me very lovingly, I believe this to be true. She said, Neil, honey, sweetheart, baby, not everyone thinks about you as much as you think they do. So I'm wondering about this for you. How this week specifically can you think of others first and think about yourself last? Maybe you're already doing it. If you are, fantastic. Tell me how you're doing it. If you're not doing it, tell me maybe how you're going to start to do that. Let me know that too. You can let us know at opspodcast.com. It's a great place to let us know. You can, of course, let us know on the socials at OPS Podcast Show under Facebook, Instagram, and X. Don't forget this when we go. Please, oh please, do not forget this. It's so important. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. I want to thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned till next week, because guess what? We're going to walk in other people's shoes.